Sheldon Dick, President ATBIS. You've done Bloomberg and HuffPo and BNN lately. You're ready for the bright lights of ATB Black and White. Welcome.
Thank you, Glenn. There's no one I would rather talk to than you.
Last weekend, Sheldon, I was at a talk given by the director, Oliver Stone. He was asked about the movie Wall Street and why he made it. He said that in the 80s, deregulation was changing Wall Street for bad, for good, but forever. He said the idea of honor and the idea of serving your client for your client's good was fading as the Gordon Geckos of the world took over the banks, became the banks essentially. When I heard Stone say that, I recalled the message that you've been on lately. You told Reuters too many investment firms are in it for themselves. I quote, "You're doing it because it will sell and you're filling a market niche, but are you actually doing the right thing for people who are counting on you to give them advice and steward their money properly?" Sheldon, why the rant these days? Where's it coming from? And are your fellow Lipper Award winners in your crosshairs?
Yeah, first of all, love the movie, and anytime you can start with a Bud Fox reference is good with me, Glenn. You know, I don't think the industry is in as bad a position as when Bud Fox was shorting Blue Star Airlines for hundreds of millions of dollars, but I think we still have a long way to go of truly being focused on what clients need and being, driven by the sole purpose of helping them achieve their goals. And yes, there are some of the other mutual fund companies, I think, that are at the center of the controversy.
How do you make sure that those who report to you and who fly the IS flag don't fall into the same trap?
The most important thing in any firm in controlling how people behave is hiring people that are driven by a sense of purpose and wanting to achieve the same things that we are. You need rules and regulations, but that can only go so far. You look at firms that have, committed heinous acts, the Enrons and WorldComs. They had, very elaborate code of conduct and ethics policies. It's culture that wins.
Is Compass really different than the others out there? You've made a point of that recently.
Yeah, I think it's very different. I think the reason it's different is sort of three fundamental design things. One is we use kind of an all-star team. So a lot of other firms design portfolios around what they do and the capabilities they have within their company. We partner with the best firms around the world, which gives us an all-star firm instead of a club team. We also have the courage to go a different direction. So when people are being ruled by greed or fear, we have had the courage to say, no, we're not going to get pulled along with that. We're going to do something different. And then lastly, we've done a great job of keeping costs low, which is a self-fulfilling prophecy in generating investment returns.
Ruled by greed and fear, what do you mean?
Well, as human beings, we tend to overreact a bit when things get either really good, and we overreact even worse when things get really dicey and are really poor. So when, media headlines are negative and returns have been low or negative for a period of time, people start seeing risk everywhere. And then the opposite side, when things have been good for a while, people forget about risk. Both of those spell problems, and for us, spell opportunity.
I awoke this morning to the headlines about Cyprus. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of examples I could cite over the last decade that have been huge for us of, when income trusts were running up and they were, at the center of Alberta was where they were being created, people got way too enthusiastic about what these things were. We, saw a different path for them and avoided the eventual deregulation would be one example. When all the headlines coming out of the U.S. were very negative and poor in 2008 and 2009, people stopped investing in the U.S. We thought they were confusing the problems of the U.S. government and the U.S. consumer with some great companies. And if you had avoided the U.S., you would have missed out on owning companies like Apple and John Deere and Walmart that produce great returns for us.
Sheldon, why did it take a decade for IS to make money? And what do the next 5 years look like on that front?
Yeah, when you build something from scratch, so when we built IS, we built it one advisor at a time. And a big part of the reason we did that was the culture we talked about earlier, is that's the only way you can control culture. The other investment firms that were formed in Canada were mainly built by acquisition. So if you look at RBC, they bought number 2, number 3, number 7, number 11, and that's how they become number 1 in the market. That's faster, but it also costs a huge amount of capital. So the way we did it, you control culture a little bit better, you lay out less capital, but it takes longer.
Next 5 years on that front?
Yeah, I think we're at a fun stage, Glenn. If we're at the point where enough of our advisors have been around for enough years that they have lots of clients, lots of assets, and lots of revenue. So the vast majority of our advisors now are profitable, and that's why Atbis is generating dividends and returns, and that's going to grow exponentially over the next 5 years. And hopefully what doesn't change is doing the right thing for clients and maintaining that high level of investment performance and client satisfaction.
Compass is 10 years old. You've been at ATB for 15. What have been the highs and the lows, big picture, of the past decade for you?
Yeah, it's kind of hard to believe. You know, I came as an executive to this firm when I was in my late 20s, and it's hard to believe the time has passed like that. You know, the highlights for me, I first came over to turn around the business bank, so it was in a lot of trouble at the time that I joined. It was going down pretty rapidly, and we turned it around and became number one in the marketplace, which was a tremendous period of change. Changing the name of Treasury branches to ATB Financial when I had the retail bank, and then the creation of Investor Services and going from a concept and idea to a firm that is the fastest growing in Canada and revered among investment companies in the world.
How about a low point? What do you still work over in your memory?
You know, I think when we were just after 9/11 and we'd spent a lot of money to launch Investor Services and the conditions were very dire and the results weren't happening as fast as we had planned and people were starting to lose faith a little bit. That was, you know, both the worst of times and the best of times, because the conditions were awful and it was very frustrating. You could see how hard it was on the team, but we looked at it as how could we turn this into our own advantage, and that's exactly what we did. So it's both a good and a bad memory, I guess.